Next, let's move on to the Properties panel. So when you start Illustrator for the first time and open a document, you'll see the Properties panel over here on the right-hand side of the workspace. And with nothing on the artboard selected, it will say No Selection right up here. If we do take our Selection tool, which is this top tool, letter V, and we select this large green shape in the background, when we look at our Properties panel now, it is specific to what we have selected. So what we have selected is a path. It's filled with this gradient. There's no stroke on it. The opacity is at 100%, and a bunch of other things are listed. So this helps us to understand what we're looking at. So sometimes it's a path, sometimes it's a compound path, sometimes it's a group. We can also click on any word that is underlined to see more information. So let's just click on the word opacity, and we'll see that the opacity is at 100%. We can change that if we want to. Give it a minute to catch up. Of course, it's gonna stall out on my computer. So if you have slow computers at home, know that I feel your pain. I consider my computer to be good, but it's not the latest. So, all right, I took it all the way down to 0% opacity, which is nothing. So let's go up to 66%, and we'll probably have to take a break here. So you can see this is something we can actively change. 100% opacity is what we want and where this file started. These other options in here we'll be looking into in later exercises, but just in general, this is your blending mode. And normal makes things look as we expect them to look, but the different blending modes can dramatically change. And this is always a good place to look if you have problems. If for some reason you're in a strange blend mode and you didn't know that you did that, your artboard could look very strange. In this case, it's not changing too much, but normal is where you should be by default in your blending modes. So just click away from that floating window or hit escape on your keyboard to get rid of it. We want to deselect this path and go back to having nothing selected. So there are several options. One is to click away from it, but notice I actually have selected the whole page. They have a layer that's this whole document. So I would have to go outside onto the dark gray to truly deselect everything and get no selection. Another option of deselecting is to go up to the Select menu and choose Deselect, or to use the keyboard shortcut. On a Mac, it's Shift Command letter A. So deselect. Make sure that you have nothing selected. It says no selection, and we'll move on. Working with our panels, we're going to experiment with hiding, opening, and closing panels. So over here on our right, we were just in the Property panel. We're now going to switch to the Layers panel. And Illustrator is made up of shapes on different layers and different stacking orders, top to bottom. And I want you to think of it and always fall back on this analogy of cutting out construction paper to make something. So if you were cutting out construction paper, it would be a lot easier. This big dark green piece, do you see the blue line of the border? It would be a lot easier to cut that out as it is and then cut out white pieces to put on top of it, rather than doing these little single free pieces or these intricate inlays. To get this heart, you would make a big light green heart shape of construction paper, and on top of it you would cut out a skinny strip of dark green and lay it on top in the stacking order. It's much easier to do that than to make a shape that is half a heart, another shape that's half of a heart, and another shape that is a skinny line, and push them all together to make sure you have no gaps in between them. So think of it as shapes and stacking of layers, and that's what our layer panel shows us. All right, over in our layers panel, we have some options, and there is a double arrow up here at the top. And when you click on that, it collapses. So it had been taking up several inches over here of my monitor space. So this is one way of giving yourself more space. When you do click on it, it's obviously going to fly out and be useful, but you can always click on these double arrows to shrink it back down. Whenever you see a double arrow appear when you're hovering over these dividing lines, you can also manipulate those. So you can shrink it down to be just an icon. And when you click on the layers, it pops out here as well. So lots of different ways to make your workspace effective for you and whatever you're working on and what kind of device you're on. If you have a lot of area and you like to have your panels open like I do, it's great. Another thing that you can do is if you get it too far gone, let's collapse it all the way back down to icons here. We can always come up to our workspace setter and click on Essentials and then say Reset Essentials, and it's going to go back to the original setting. So we were looking at our layers, properties, and libraries. Let's add a panel and move it over here and dock it. So if you're looking for panels that you don't see right now, you can find them under the window drop-down. So all of these that do not have a check mark in front of them are panels that we can add. The one that we want to add is the Align panel. So click on it and you're going to bring up this panel that's free-floating and just move it over here a little bit closer. Notice that this panel has 3 tabs: Transform, Align, and Pathfinder. The Align is the one that we want at our fingertips, so to speak, and we want it as part of this group over here. So we're actually going to add it. We're going to drag it from the tab and we're going to bring it over here. Now when we get this blue box, that means that if we let go, it's going to add it to this set right here and give us a 4th tab. If I'm up a little higher and I get this blue bar, if I let go here, it's going to add it as its own single panel above these 3. What I want to do is add it to this group. So when the box is around the whole thing, I'm just going to let go, and now it's a 4th tab that we have available to us. So if Align is something you're using quite a bit of, you might want to have it docked, or you might want to have it free-floating. So if we go back to this panel, we see the 2 other items, Pathfinder and Transform. If we don't want those, we just close out this tab and we free up some space on our workspace again. All right. The workspace switcher that I just mentioned, we're in Essentials right now. Properties, layers, libraries are the 3 by default. We added Align. But there are some presets here that we might want to use. So let's just look at the layout. Notice what changed. We have our color swatches. We have gradients showing up. Our layers panel and artboards are still available down here. And we have Transform and Align. If we wanted to go back to Essentials, we would come up here and choose Essentials. And this is going to remember what we last did. So notice that Align tab that we manually added is still there. If we want to go back to the reset version, we have to click on Reset Essentials. And now it's back to how it was straight out of the gates without our extra tab added. If you want to save a workspace, so we put that Align in there. Let's just do that again as practice. Let's just say we want to put the Align panel back in. So we drag it over, we wait for the square box and we let go. Close all this out. Let's say this is the workspace we prefer. We can come up to the window menu and choose Workspace and then New Workspace. Excuse me. And from here, we can give it a custom name. So you can give it your name or just call it My Workspace. Now we can see that we are working in the customized version called My Workspace. This can be really helpful if you find something that works for you. Maybe you have it set up exactly as you like it. Maybe you have your toolbar as a double bar and you prefer that. Maybe you've gone in and customized the toolbar by going to the More, and you know that magic wand is something you want in the Select family of tools, and you've dragged it into the toolbar. Once you get something the way you like it, there's no reason you can't save that workspace and give it a custom name, which is very helpful.